But if we is it giving you All right, good evening, everyone. So anyone who's joining us, welcome. We're going to call the meeting to order. It is now 6:05. We'll take roll. I am present. Trustee Romero is not here. Trustee Sullivan, present. Trustee Dryden,
Present.
Trustee Nowak,
Present.
Dr. Ramirez,
Present.
and Ms. Peterson. Will she be joining us tonight?
She's on.
Oh, you're on Zoom. Oh, hey, Tammy, how are you? Didn't see you there. All right, and then we have Brianna here as our executive assistant. All right, so can I get a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
Linda?
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion, changes, edits to the agenda? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 4-0. All right, so Brianna, do we have any public comment on closed session items this evening? Okay, all right, with that being said, we will go ahead and recess from the open session and we'll go to closed session and then we'll reconvene as soon as we're done with closed session. So see everybody back at around hopefully 6:30. Good, okay. Sign off on from the Las Vegas Water Valley Rights Coalition versus the Fox Canyon Groundwater Settlement Agreement. All right, so can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? All right, hand to the heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So, Brianna, do we have any audience requests to address the board? Oh, 6, I'm sorry, minutes. I got ahead of myself there. Can I get a motion for the approval of the minutes from the regular board meeting on August 16th, 2022?
I move to approve the August 16, 2022 minutes.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion, comments, or corrections? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, minutes are approved.
Dr. Candy, if you want to acknowledge the fact that we lost
Yes,
trustee.
yes, and Trustee Nowak has stepped out for the meeting for a moment. Hopefully she'll be able to return. So we still have a quorum with 3 board members in attendance. And then continuing, number 7, do we have the audience to address the Board of Trustees? Comments by the public, Brianna? No comments. All right, moving along, we'll go ahead and go to item 8, which is the superintendent's report, and turn the floor over to Dr. Ramirez.
Okay, well, thank you, board. And we do have some attendees virtually, so very much a welcome to anybody who's out there listening. So as far as the superintendent's report, you see there you see the agenda there for the presentation itself. Just make a few comments specifically about the opening of the school year. It has been a very pleasant opening of the school year, a very joyful opening of the school year, and a very good start for what we all hope would be a year where we continue to find our way as far as establishing a new normalcy. So I just see on the slide deck there a few items there, a few pictures from our most recent back to school night last week. We did have to make some adjustments there, particularly to our TKK, but all in all, it was a really good turnout, really pleasant to see families back with us. That event was in person, and it was a great opportunity for our families to come together anew, welcome, and also see many of the changes that we've made to the physical plant, to the facilities. Be it the windows in particular, which are the most visible, and many other small details that I think are bringing our facilities into good form. But I think to the broader point about this being a really nice start to the year, the kids in particular have been great. They've been, just attentive, just very engaged, and I couldn't have asked for a better start to the school year. In terms of health and wellness, I just want to continue to make this a topic, and I want to be able to kind of shift a little bit in terms of the way in which we've talked about health and wellness over the last several years. Of course, there are still guidelines that we need to pay attention to. Many of those guidelines I'll speak to in a moment, the ones that have started to roll back in terms of the pandemic and COVID specifically. But I did want to start with just a broader discussion around campus safety. Our campus safety has always been a top priority. There are different elements of it that have received the most attention. During the pandemic, of course, it had everything to do with minimizing the spread of COVID, minimizing the impact to any one individual or families in our community. Now that the pandemic is receding and fading more and more into the background each day, the attention flows to other parts of campus safety, which have always been important and now are making their appearance anew. So specifically, I wanted to address that We are currently undertaking a very comprehensive view. We are part of the county. We're participating in a collaborative with the County Office of Education and the Self-Funding Authority, amongst other entities, that are looking at our safety, campus safety, school safety in a very holistic way, with many, many components to it, and also tailoring it to every individual campus and school district, because every single school district across the county is situated differently, has different roles within it, and Mesa is unique and unto itself. So what I will say is that we are actively right now undertaking a series of seminars. BSA and Ms. Peterson is certainly a part of that, as are the superintendents and personnel of all the other 5 small school districts, with whom we have a great deal in common. And the reason I mention all of that is because we need to prioritize. We need to make sure that we are coordinating our efforts with law enforcement agencies, that we have a common understanding of what we need to be able to do as really true first responders in the event of emergency, and where their role comes in supporting those efforts. So again, to the intent is to prioritize aspects, knowing that we have a lot of strengths, but we have some protocols and processes to be able to revisit. And that's really where we find ourselves at the very beginning phases of that evaluation. And but nevertheless, we are taking actions wherever we see the need. And obviously the opening of the school year provided us plenty of areas to focus on and prioritize already. So with that, I wanted to highlight 2 specific practices and procedures that we will revisit coming this week and next. Number 1 is specific to our visitor and guest policies. We're continuing to revisit those, tighten those up, particularly the physical presence of adults in the building during school hours. And that's something that we noticed, or we notified our parents of our interest in ensuring that that their kiddos are left at the gates and dropped off at the gates, so as to provide, number 1, clarity about the adults that are on campus, and also number 2, to preserve and protect instructional time. Being that we have staggered start times, it is possible to have adults right now on campus when school has effectively already begun for many of our grade levels, our upper grades in particular, 8-10 and then 8-25. So there's that 15-minute gap that we want to make sure we're mindful. All in all, that is proven to be, we've had to clarify a few things, and we're in the middle of our implementation and ongoing messaging, but that's been overall received mostly appropriately by our community. The other one has to do with our dismissal procedures. We are, again, in that same light of preserving safety and ensuring that we maintain safety. We are asking that our parents not withdraw students from school within the last 30 minutes of school. And we find, after a lot of discussion with our staff, we find that tracking the movement of students within that critical end of the day can lead to, potentially could lead to some challenges that we would much rather avoid. In addition to that, the close of the day is important for teachers as they talk about their wrap-up procedures, give instructions for the following day, or even start to set things up for the following day. And we want to make sure that their attention is fully on ending the day in a strong note and ensuring that kids are dismissed in a safe and effective manner. Lastly, another area of focus has been transportation, and just doubling down on our efforts to ensure that we are appropriately ensuring that every one of our kids is where they need to be, and that we are intaking our students and making sure that they, once they arrive at their destination, be it school or at their bus stop, that they find their way to safely home, either by way of a trusted adult or that they just navigate their way depending on what their circumstances and age happens to be. So we put a lot of things in place already that we needed to make sure was being followed upon. And that's where we spent a great deal of our time. So I just want to highlight a few important things that are relevant to us as we start the year, and where we are just continuing to learn from everything we're seeing. Lastly, we also, as important as those points, is that we just last week held a training with our Ventura County Sheriff's Department with our staff, not just certificated. We invited our classified. That'll be part of an ongoing effort there. And the focal point was active assailant. We needed to make sure that our staff felt a sense of preparation on that, and that they were receiving information specifically from sheriffs about how they would respond in a situation, an unfortunate situation where there was an active assailant on campus or in the vicinity. One other thing that I will mention is Officer Holmes, in particular, who largely facilitated the training, was or is a parent here at Mesa. And so in addition to just being great as a school resource officer and sheriff, he has that lens of being a parent and being a community member, which is incredible for us to be able to focus on and have as an asset to our community. So more conversations on that to come, more planning to come, and certainly just a step in the right direction for us. Going back to our pandemic and COVID guidelines, we continue to see that things are falling off in terms of any guidelines and restrictions, and we're continuing to update ourselves with that. The most recent example is vaccine verification for workers in schools. That is something that is no longer a mandate. Will no longer have to undergo weekly COVID testing in lieu of vaccination status being affirmative. And that is something that, again, just continues to move us down the road of normalcy, I suppose. In light of this, we will certainly take another look at our volunteer policy. We always have to balance the need to just maintain safety and maintain ourselves in good health with access and support from families. And I say that also conscious of the prior conversation where we're talking about being an inviting place, as Mesa has always been, and balancing that, of course, with the need to ensure that our instructional time is as free of interruptions as possible, but also that we are able to monitor and carefully assess the adults on campus. So this is no different in that regard. We want to make sure that our kids and staff are healthy, because even though the chances of hospitalization or worse have dramatically declined, it still proves to be a challenge when work is interrupted or kids are not in school, and we want to be thoughtful about that as well. So we will continue to encourage our community to work with us on screening, for symptoms, and just being responsible with the way in which they engage our community, be it at the classroom level or staff level, regardless. And then just to finish off that point, we continue to monitor and notify via the COVID dashboard. So that has been updated. Those numbers are indicative of some numbers that we saw over the last several days and over the last week to 10 days, really. Our enrollment is reflected there, and that's been brought current. And, we will continue to monitor that, just for the foreseeable future. So I'll pause there because I know there may be some comments from the board or questions, and I will entertain those briefly as we talk about learning and our Measure O bond in particular.
I guess I'll start with a first comment about the back to school night. I thought it was really great. I'm lucky that I went last week and I get to go again this week. But I thought it was really nice to invite the students to back to school night. Several reasons, but one of them definitely being the whole point of back to school night is for the teachers to address the parents and let them know what the day looks like at school and what the rules of the classroom are. And it was really nice to be able to hear that with your child so that you're both very aware of what this routine should look like, what the rules are for your class, how you're expected to behave, all of those kind of things. So that way it's not one-sided. So then it could become a family communication, and parents are then able to really have that dialogue with their kids because they're knowing what's going on in that moment as well. So that's something that we haven't typically done in the past, but at least with my family, I thought it let us have some conversations that I think would be helpful for the general public.
Thank you, Ms. Dryden. And I'll just add one more point because, you know, I still consider myself a relative newcomer to Mesa, and I want to be very mindful and respectful of past traditions, practices. I will just give you my honest opinion when it comes to children or students attending the event. They are our show. They are who we work for. They are it. So to me, having students be here to participate, build community, show their parents their desks, show their parents their classrooms, show them their work, show them and be proud of the people who are working with them on a daily basis. That is, to me, and to us, I think I can say that, incredibly important. So I respect, I want to be as mindful and respectful of traditions, but I also have a bias toward being very student focused and allowing them to take ownership over their own experience. So I was glad to see that many families, I believe, shared in your sentiment. And I saw a lot of smiles, a lot of conversation, a lot of knowledge about a host of things. So I was glad to see it go well. So thank you for noticing that. As far as moving into learning and engagement,
I
sorry, Ms. Sullivan, go ahead.
I just wanted to reiterate, you're talking about getting back to normalcy. I was encouraged by the fact that our president had acknowledged that the pandemic is over, and that you had mentioned something about vaccines and mandates, or that has changed. Can you speak a little more about what has changed as far as the Ventura County Department of Health, and what they're still mandating that we need to do in light of what the president has said?
There's been no specific guidance coming from Ventura County Public Health. Most of the guidance that's come to us over the last, I would say, 6 months has largely come from the California Department of Public Health. I can tell you just locally that months now removed, the county public health was tracking COVID numbers and asking us to track and report them. That has not been the case as we've opened the year. So I can't go as far as to say that they're silent on the issue. I don't believe that to be true, but I also don't want to represent it as anything being brought forward in a way that's quite as direct and ongoing as it had been during the last 2 school years. So nothing specific to anything that the president mentioned, to be very frank about it. All right, so just moving on, and thank you both for those questions. Certainly, feel free to ask any further questions as we move along. In terms of learning and engagement, I just wanted to make one really important point. There's many things to report on this. Some will come up a little later, but right now I wanted to really inform the board and the community that we are looking to get back into some adoptions and some adoption cycles. We are looking specifically at a science, next generation science standards, adopted or aligned materials being piloted this school year. In this slide deck, you'll see more or less of a broad overview of the kind of process that we'll be undertaking. We're looking forward to being a small school district. I think we can both benefit from what other school districts have already done, learn from them, but also be very nimble in our approach. So we want to be thorough because these are materials that want to choose wisely. But right now we are definitely looking to move ahead. Q1 will be more or less of our evaluation period broadly, taking a look at a number of materials, entertaining what might be the best fit for us, and using the next following 3 quarters to identify specific materials at each turn that we can then use and our staff can use to compare materials one to the next. So I just wanted to inform the board that we would moving in that direction, and the public, of course. But beyond that, Also highlight that the decision for elementary materials would likely come next year. We want to let some initiatives settle and us, gain a foothold on those before moving in that direction. But the middle school, Mrs. Spillane and Mrs. Roberson are very excited to have that discussion and move ahead. So we wanted to make that a priority. So if there are any questions, I'm free to answer those.
I have a question if this is more different ways things are being presented as far as reference materials, or if they're teaching different things.
It's a combination of the two, because the materials, the next generation science standards have been revised a few times over the last several years. And so the sequence of the ordering of topics, I think that is something that the teachers have been focusing on maintaining. But now it would be bringing instructional materials that will help more or less take it to the next level. Right now, the materials that we're using are more in the realm of transitional. And I think that's something that this process will reveal. Like, what are the materials that mean the most to us? One of the priorities that they have talked about is ensuring that there's hands-on learning about science, as an example. So any materials that we use will be a combination of exploring phenomena out in nature to the extent that we can, but also recreating those within the classroom or lab setting. So those are just conversations that we've had at the tail end of last year and into this year. So to circle back to your question, it will be new experiences because those materials will lend themselves to perhaps certain labs or certain phenomena that may not be a part of what they can do now. So that's part of why the piloting phase is so critical, because we have to be able to balance what the learning looks like and how it actually plays out with students, as opposed to in theory from a publisher. Okay, so moving on into facilities. Our Measure O bond window replacement is reaching its final stages. Unfortunately, this has been it's gone on a little longer than we expected and than any of us would have wished. But I will say this: we have just even as early as or as recently as this week have now started to occupy spaces that previously we hadn't. So what you have there is a rundown of the spaces and their progress. More recently, our main office is now back in the main office and is back operational. Our classrooms, our 4 kindergarten classrooms, are ready to receive students. 2 of them have already moved in. A third will move in tomorrow, with a 4th to follow very immediately thereafter. And the idea is to have our HVAC system operational very soon, within the next couple of weeks. That installation has been ongoing evenings, weekends, just to ensure that we get past the finish line. The other area that is still pending is our kitchen. Our kitchen received a major upgrade, both in terms of equipment and infrastructure. And we're looking forward to finalizing that project. The range that the board approved months ago is slated to be delivered and installed on Friday, as an example. And so I'm really optimistic that we're at the tail end of this. I know that as early as next month, we'll have a rundown of where we are on a budget, from a budget perspective. Just know that has been a focal point for me, at least, throughout the project, but more specifically since about late July, on a daily basis through today. And I'm very happy with the way in which we as a district have adjusted. Very feel very supported by BSA and Orlando de Leon in his director role. And we are just looking to bring this to a close as soon as possible. But with that said, the kind of upgrades that we'll be seeing are going to be significant for Mesa for decades to come. And that also, brings me to another point, which is Unfortunately, some of these delays happened as a result of conditions that we could not have fully foreseen. And we needed to make sure that those were addressed, and they have been. And that's in part what has created this delay. Lastly, food services, we are in the cafeteria. All of our students are actually now in the cafeteria. We're all back there the way that we were, I guess it would have been 3 years ago. And with the partnership of Moorpark, we will see a little later, we are in good shape right now for the foreseeable future until our kitchen is done. What you see there is just some pictures of the space. Our cafeteria has been repainted. Nice color scheme there, consistent with the rest of the, that ties in, I think, well with the exterior. And that really highlights the fact that we have new infrastructure by way of windows and of course the HVAC that's coming soon. The exterior of buildings has also been undertaken, and we just wanted to make sure that we were finishing the project off and showing off the best that we could of our facilities. As far as attendance is concerned, just to switch gears, you have a very, very small sliver of attendance there dating to August. And it's not the best sample size, but it is one that's important nevertheless. And so I'll be looking forward to tracking our attendance now more than ever as we talk about one of the important strategies toward solidifying our learning and our instructional program overall. Lastly, we have some upcoming events. By no means is this an exhaustive list. It is not. Just merely a representative list of things that we have going on here through the end of the month. We have our middle school back to school night, as Mrs. Dryden alluded to a second ago, this Thursday. We have our TKK back to school night, which we wanted to more or less wait until they were back in the building, just because those families missed out, if you will, on the opportunity to have that experience first day. And so our staff agreed that this would make sense for us. And then lastly, we have our CME, or Catalina Island field trip, coming up on Friday the 30th, which will extend through June, that Sunday, October. Wrong month. October the 2nd. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and conclude my superintendent's report. Thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ramirez. So moving on now, we have communications. So we have a correspondence from the Ventura County Office of Education, have reviewed our 2022-2023 adopted budget report and LCAP plan. And was that favorable? Approved? Yep. Okay. And do we have any other board members' reports or communications?
I do. So one of my tasks was being more involved with the MEF and PFO in our community. So I attended the quarterly PFO and just reminding everybody to do the, participate with the PFO, whether that's volunteering or becoming a member of the PFO with a monetary donation. They're also doing a fundraiser for the legacy bricks, where they can engrave a brick and put it in school property, for the next 80 years or plus that we're going to be here. And I just wanted to really highlight how important supporting our PFO is, because I attended that meeting, and they increased both the school funds for every teacher. So every teacher, when they start the year, they get X amount of dollars for their classroom, which is why our kids don't have to go and get glue sticks and pencils and papers and all of those things, because the teachers go and get everybody ready to go and get their classrooms, and they increase both that and the amount that they're donating for the junior high field trips, like the CME trip and the 8th grade trip as well, or the 6th grade trip to Pali. And so it's just one of those things as parents and as community members, they greatly support all of our kiddos with all of this instructional material and great experiences. And so if you haven't already, I would definitely say to become a member of the PFO. And the MEF is holding their casino night at the end of this month, at the end of October. And just a reminder that the early bird discount ends at the end of September. So if you want your discounted tickets, do that. And then the MEF supports things like the arts our music program and things like that. So these two groups contribute both monetary amounts and all of the hours they contribute to our school community is invaluable. So please consider supporting both programs.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie. Any other reports, communications? All right, and item 9C is board members' interest or concerns. Anything that the board wanted to bring up this evening's meeting? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to the next action item or next agenda item is the consent agenda. And so if I can get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as presented, all those in favor? All right, okay. All right, very good. So now moving on to item 11, which are informational items. We have the annual assessment data report, the CAASPP for spring of 2022. Dr. Mears, do you have anything for that?
Okay, well, good evening again, board. Before you is a report on our assessment data for the 21-22 school year. And one of the things that, let me start with the intent of the presentation. So the intent of the presentation is to provide an overview of the assessment data for this past school year. And I want to be able to kind of to center the performance from this prior year on. I want to be able to center on the performance of our students on various assessments this past year. But in addition to that, be able to discuss with the board the plans that we have both formulated and that are already ongoing, as well as those dating back to last year, as well as those that are have gotten underway as we've started a new school year. The first slide that you see there, just for context's sake, is the 2018-2019 CAS results. And the reason why these were put into this presentation is because they do represent the last CAS or state assessment that Mesa undertook. So all of this was effectively pre-pandemic, a different cohort of students, different timeline and era, if you will. In a moment, we're going to transition to in an effort not to bury the lead, but rather to talk openly about where we are. This particular table highlights our performance during this last school year's round of assessments. Okay, so I do want to be able to say, I do want to make a few points as we look at this data. Number one, the data sets here presented include both local data, as highlighted there at the bottom, data sets that the board had actually already seen back in the spring or late winter, relative to our star read, which is an assessment type that we give here locally. The other inclusion there is to a summative assessment for CASP, and it's delineated and broken down by the grades that participate in that assessment, grades 3 through 8. So what you see there is a holistic performance. It's an overall performance for students in ELA, and understanding that one important point to this, and I just want to acknowledge it, is that there was and there has been a significant interruption to learning over the last 2.5 years. It's just a statement of fact, and it's something that is important to represent. It's also important to represent as we have during this entire time, that the impact of the pandemic was not evenly distributed, and that there are circumstances where students, although all of them were impacted, that there were cohorts of students or individual students that were impacted disproportionately throughout. I mention that only as context, as just an acknowledgement of the circumstances that certainly played into the results that we see here. Beyond that, I also wanted to represent that the results here, to be quite frank about it, are not the type of results that myself or staff or the community want to see. They happen to be, in this case, a hard reality that is painting a picture of where we are currently, and is and will serve as a springboard for the types of actions and the focused efforts that we will undertake, not just this year, but that in effect we've already undertaken dating back to last year. And I will highlight a few in the coming slides. And so I just wanted to provide that and preface the comments by saying that the drop in performance, albeit in different cohorts and different times in ELA, is by my count approximately, let me see, it is approximately 11%, 12% almost in, it's about an 11% drop from that year in ELA. And if you go one additional, something consistent or with about a 12% drop in math. A lot to unpack here, no doubt. And it is something that we've spent time with our school leadership team discussing, as well as with our entire certificated staff as we open the year. And it will be something that we will continue to refer back to as far as the learning that comes with it. The challenge with data sets of this sort is that they are, rather recent, but from a year past. In fact, the 8th grade cohort isn't with us at this point. They're in high school. So we have to be able to hold that as we talk about our decisions now. And how do we create new information that allows us to see more accurately where students are today, okay? But with that said, let me conclude this section, and then I definitely want to open it up to comments from the board relative to this particular, the performance that you saw there. The next slides, I'm not going to go into each one of these, but I think it's important context just to bring us back into what these assessment types indicate now, as opposed to maybe, because it's been a few years since we last discussed these. But I just wanted to mention a few things. The following slides here are open items. They are items that are released to the public, and these are examples of performance tasks. Every student in grades 3 through 8 completes a performance task in ELA, or English Language Arts, and in math. And these assessments, not just these, but the entire assessment of state assessment is computer adaptive, meaning that not only is every student's experience a different experience, not only does every student experience a different set of tasks, very unique to each tester, but rather also moderates and modulates depending on the student's performance. So in effect, a student that is achieving and answering and responding to tasks competently will continue to receive tasks that are at that academic rigor or at that level. If a student does not, they will basically be reoriented to tasks that are more at their level. All of this is calculated and results in a performance band, right? So with that said, these performance tasks, and I selected some from grades 3, 5, and 8, give you a sense of what cognitive abilities are being assessed, but not just cognitive abilities. It's competencies like critical thinking, text analysis, reasoning ability, and also the ability to use evidence to support an argument or to explain their thinking. So I represent these in an effort to highlight two things. One, just the rigor of the particular assessment, which is above and beyond the last generation of the assessments. But in addition to that, to also highlight that our students even if they're not performing at a level at which we want them to, it does not mean that they are devoid of skills. It does not mean that they are devoid of competencies or abilities in their own right. Our challenge is to continue to grow them and accelerate growth to match the rigors, not just of this assessment, because what this assessment is attempting to do is represent the types of thinking that will be important to high school, college, and beyond, okay? So I represent these, and you can see that one other point, that even in the math, you will see that it is not just about computational math. It's not only about arithmetic or not only about automaticity in mathematics. It still involves a great deal of critical thinking, being able to communicate, in this case through writing, in an effective and competent manner. And those are the skills that this assessment is testing for, but also the ones that we are tasked as educators here at Mesa to be able to engender in our students. So as you just scroll through, it just gives you a sense of what our kiddos, third grader, those are kids that are 9 and 10. And you can see what's being asked of them in terms of the cognitive demand for them to accomplish. And even in the realm of math, there is quite a bit that is involved there that is very literacy dependent. Just continue to scroll through in grade 5, and then grade 5 there in math, grade 8, and grade 8 in mathematics. So with that said, here are just a few highlights that were brought forward. CASP assessment was undertaken again for the first time since 2019. These are obviously different cohorts of students. The results do provide a post-pandemic baseline of and for learning. And obviously the impact of learning during the pandemic is coming into focus. And that is just, again, just an acknowledgement that that is the case. We also know that there were pre-pandemic and post-pandemic realities. Unfortunately, we cannot rewind time, but what we can do is focus on ways in which we are going to address learning, accelerate learning, and keep our students engaged in tasks that are going to be helpful to them, not just in the performance of this assessment, but just in terms of the rigors that they're going to expect at the next step, whether it's high school or college or beyond. And then as far as our instructional focus, it will continue to be rigorous, relevant learning and being task-oriented. In other words, not just completing simplified questions or responses. There's a place for that, but really pushing ourselves and pushing our students to be able to deal with the complexity and navigate the complexity of learning that this particular assessment happens to promote. So I'm going to go ahead and pause there, take questions, comments from the board before transitioning into what our plans and response have been and will continue to be.
I just have a basic question, because in the middle years or that middle time, we're using the STAR assessment, and the numbers definitely don't really line up with the CASP testing. So I just was curious more than anything how we're using that, or if we're just using that as informational of how they progressed during that year, but not trying to compare it too much because it might be apples and oranges. But I'm just curious how we're using the two different data sets.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a that's a great question. It's a little bit of a limited comparison because the STAR is it's also computer adaptive. It basically measures largely comprehension. It doesn't delve into writing. It doesn't delve into other parts of analysis, things of that nature. We have other assessments that we've looked at, including performance tasks that we put forward and bring to the students that more closely align with this particular assessment, or at least parts of this assessment. So the STAR assessment provides us just a glimpse. It's helpful, but it is not intended to be a one-for-one. What we're really looking for there is growth. What we're looking for, and there's a number of reports that teachers can and do use to be able to get a sense of where students are specifically or where cohorts of kids are. And it's helpful still to us to measure progress along the year. Now, I will say this, we are having a very important conversation. It's an ongoing one about how we evaluate learning and what are the right measures for it. So right now, that is what we've used in recent history. It still is useful, but it is by no means intended to be a one-for-one.
So one thing here, I mean, I think this is not somewhat unexpected data. I mean, we've kind of been planning this. I mean, the state has been planning on this. They've, appropriated more funds for extra learning processes. And I know we've been kind of focusing on that even, starting early last year and kind of how we're going to go forward this. So, again, it's disappointing. Obviously, we would have liked to have seen our students do better. I mean, the whole reason we always talk about is why are we here is to, educate our kids. But again, not wholeheartedly, completely unexpected. So I kind of understand the process and some of the limitations and things of that nature. I guess my one question that I had is across the state, this was not unique to us, or was this kind of something that was seen kind of across the whole state?
Yeah, it's that is still coming into focus. The full release of data sets won't happen until approximately December. And that's when we'll be able to really get a full view. Right now, we're looking at preliminary data, and we've been asked, those of us who have access to it have been asked not to share publicly where the state is yet. That will come. And what I can tell you anecdotally is that this is pretty common in relation to the trends that are coming our way. And in fact, we know that to be true because there are schools and districts that participated in a standardized assessment years prior, or last year specific, or 2 years ago specifically. We chose not to. I do not regret that decision because at that time, it was more important to preserve time with students. And whether that decision was the right one or not, I can't fully say, but I feel confident that I can only say that I feel confident that we preserve time for learning and not for assessment. And I for one feel comfortable with that because that was the right thing to do, I believe, for us at Mesa and what we were trying to plan. So it is very consistent with what I've already seen across the state and what's been started to be reported across the nation. It is very, very disappointing and very frustrating, but it is, I'm afraid to say, a much broader reality.
I had a couple of comments, if I may. Number one, trying to compare the STAR versus CAS, especially with 2 years of school closure in hybrid systems, is this is to be expected. But I'm so excited right now that we're back in full school. We're back in the normalcy, and kids and teachers can do what they do best and be able to perform. I'm trying to figure out how we incentivize that and let these children know, the students know, the teachers know. I'm so excited to see them all shine now that we've got classes full session. I feel so sorry for the students that have been deprived of so much during the whole pandemic thing. It is what it is. I don't think you did anything wrong not doing the assessment 2 years. I got no qualms about that whatsoever. And I just want to make sure that we still have good teachers here, which we do. I applaud them. We've got good administration. And we also have additional resources that our students can tap into. And I want to make sure that they're encouraged to continue to tap into the tutoring services that we have available to them. I don't want them to be 20 students 24/7, but I want them to be able to come up to speed as quickly as possible and recoup that which they've lost. And so I'm very excited to see what the future brings. And that's what I think that we should be seeing. And I think that's what we should be encouraging, saying, we're back here. Now let's show them what we've got. And let's be proud and pleased about what we do and let the students shine.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Certainly that is our sentiment and part of the reason that I designed this particular presentation in this fashion is precisely for that reason, to talk about what comes next and how we will focus on ensuring that we are doing our best to focus on learning, really. So let's transition to talking about those plans. I've mentioned this before, and I will continue to mention it. The features of the framework for the future are very aligned to the kind of competencies, skills that students need to be able to demonstrate. And I mentioned before, the goal is not for them to perform well on a test, at least not for me. The reason for us highlighting those is so that they can be competent learners, so that they can do well and have options available to them as they transition out of Mesa after 8th grade, ideally, and onto high school and beyond. A byproduct of that focus is to ensure that they can also manage the rigors of this particular assessment. It is not a primary driver, but it is important. So when we talk about the characteristics, critical thinker, communicator, things of that nature that have already been identified in our framework for the future and delineated, and you'll see now how it's working its way into the focal point for each and every grade level team. It's important to keep that in mind. The other thing is our goals and our resources need to be aligned. And it's not just aligned for the students that are in need of support. They're very important, but it's also to extend learning for the students. As we saw, it's not an all or nothing proposition. We have a number of students that have done well, and we have to both celebrate them, but not just celebrate them, but encourage them and support them in continuing their advancement and their growth. We can't stifle one in exchange for the other. So that's why I don't want to just talk about learning supports exclusively, but rather talk about what learning experiences need to look like for all students, and then talk about how we will support the students that perhaps need temporary or more long-term assistance, right? In getting them to where they need to be. So with that said, we're going to talk in a moment about learning supports. And actually, just I wanted to highlight that we've already got actions delineated in our LCAP with resources and dollars attached to it to ensure that we are building out our program in a more and more supportive way, and in a way to address the priorities and the challenges that we have. So I won't go into all the goals, but there are 4 goals. The 4th of which includes, for all of us who are employees here, the need to continue to stay current with our practices. And I will make one simple example. The same way that these buildings have served us incredibly well as a community for the past 80 years, they are being modernized. All of us as professionals working here need to continue to stay current and continue to grow in our professional practice, because it's just what's needed. The kids of 2022 and beyond are, I'm afraid to say, a little different than they were in past generations. Neither good or bad, but just we have to continue to be adaptive. And so there is a goal explicitly indicating professional growth development for anybody who works here on campus. And that is an expectation that they shouldn't handle, any employee should not handle alone, but rather as a team and as a broader collective. So with that moving on, I want to get to learning supports, and the board has seen these before, and I won't go into all of them. There are a number of them, but rather I want to spotlight 3 very specifically, things that we are very proud to have been put in place, that I believe will be true drivers for continued growth and continued achievement. Let me start with the first. This year, the board may have seen this in my communication. We have always been very strong in our PLC collaboration. PLC meaning professional learning community. For us, typically, that's our grade level team. But more and more, we're seeing that team is expanding. And I'll make mention of that in just a minute. But specifically, we want a focused, coherent instructional program. What does that mean? That means where there is engagement, learning, challenging learning experiences across any classroom. And not to say that they're going to be cookie cutter. There's always going to be opportunity for some differences depending on the makeup of the class or or the interest of that particular season, but it has to be really aligned so that there is continuity from one classroom to the next to the following. And typically for us, it's meant across an entire grade span, but we have to be challenged to make that from one grade span to the next to the following, so that kids don't have to relearn systems anew every time they go into a new grade, but rather can continue to develop at a pace that continues to support them. And there's more of a handoff from one grade to the next. Particularly key because over the last several years, we've onboarded and hired some phenomenal new teachers. And we want to make sure that they come into the culture, but also share with us the things that they bring that are unique to them. So we will continue to employ a plan, do, study, act cycle. But for 2022, 2023, teacher teams have a common time to meet on a consistent basis. And I think that's hugely important because it allows teachers to be much more collaborative, to be much more thoughtful, to have just space to be able to talk about how students are doing and how they're shaping learning experiences, and be able to learn from each other and from anybody who is outside of the classroom, whether it be a presenter, a partner, or one of our very staff that's on release. So I focus on three things. One is planning learning activities, and not just planning, but making them really engaging, thoughtful, cross-curricular. The other one is evaluating student performance on classroom-based task and assessment. There's tons of things that teachers are always putting in front of students that give them information about how students are learning. That counts as much as the STAR does, because it allows teachers to start personalizing things and providing more choice at a student's level, knowing that they need to challenge them to whatever the next level may be. But that can only happen through consistent collaboration with colleagues. It's no wonder that if our teachers are asked to operate in their own silo, that we're going to be limited on what we can do. So we just got very creative in making some adjustments to common times by repurposing time. And I really have to credit Ms. Kuklinski, who really took this on and was very creative. So I want to just show you a little bit about what those schedules look like, not for all the grade levels, but for a few. You see there TK, second and fifth grade. Right now, this is extending from TK to fifth grade. And every week, by repurposing time in music, in library, and in PE, we have created pockets of time, not new time, but just repurposed time to be able to create more time within the school week to be able to meet on a regular basis. Right? And why that's so important is because now it allows for continuity of dialogue and conversation and expectations. So we're very excited about this. The teachers were very excited to see it. And, we're still working our way through. It's only the first month. So I'm just excited about this as well. Here are the commitments that they've made for this year. Middle school is going to be moving in the direction of student portfolios. Second grade, they're looking at exhibitions of learning. Third through fifth, student-led conferences and student portfolios. And TK1, writing portfolios, student-led conferences. So you see a lot of commonalities. We're putting things back on the learner to be in the driver's seat of their learning, but also to receive the support that they need to demonstrate what they've learned and be able to articulate it in a meaningful way. Math support. We know that we need math support, and we've hired an additional teacher. Ms. Schwartz has been with us for the past 2 years, and we are very glad to have her on board. We are coordinating schedules, and we're still in the process of that. The focus will be in middle school, grades 6 through 8, and we're going to focus on MTSS period 7, which is already part of our existing bell schedule and master schedule. And we're going to be looking to, our next challenge is to find ways to extend the day for some of our students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And we're looking at preliminarily a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split and a Tuesday, Thursday split, being very focused on students that need that additional time and need that development of mathematical skills and reasoning to make them more comfortable, more confident, and more competent within the classroom. And it's going to take us time, but kids need more time, not less, right? More opportunity to engage with a trained professional, not less. And then in the upper elementary grades 3 through 5, we are looking at coordinating schedules to allow for classrooms to receive support, teachers to receive support, again, through this teacher, Schwartz, who's remained with us for one additional year beyond that. And then, of course, again, a third important initiative is everything that the board has heard from me about our early childhood learning. This began in spring of 2022, right around February. We started to really have some meaningful conversations with our TK, K, and 1 grade classrooms. And the focus is on foundational literacy and numeracy skills. We have to be able to take a long view on this because we have to be able to attend to things attend to learning where it begins. And so this is, it started with the Sunday learning system, but it has evolved into much more conversations around the science of reading, how students read, what we can do that is research backed to be able to support and foster learning. And you see there kind of an at a glance of the way in which schedules are coordinated in order to make that support happen in the classroom. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and conclude there, but open up to any discussion and feedback, understanding this is a big topic.
I just want to start with the term questions. On the previous slide, is push in and pull out, like push in information, like supply information, and then pull out, try to see if the children received it? Just one more slide ahead of this. Yeah. And you could walk through what those terms mean.
Yes. So with us, so push in means literally where the teacher comes into the classroom, and pull out means when the students are coming out of the classroom. And we have to be very thoughtful of coordinating schedules, because if a group of students needs to come out of the classroom to receive very intensive support, the classroom doesn't stop because they're not there, right? So we have to be able to be very thoughtful about what kind of learning happens during the time that they're there or not. So we want to be very mindful to pull out kids only on an as needed basis, and only to be able to target very specific skills, because we don't want to inadvertently set them back by being able to move them out of their cohort, with the rest of their peers. So very simply put, push in means that there's adults coming into the classroom. Pull out means that there's kids coming out for small group instruction. Typically in groups anywhere between 3 and 5 students is typical for this approach and for the age group.
And then for the after school opportunities, or that 7th period, well, I guess those are different things, but the 7th period, all junior high is receiving math just at their different levels, or is it only that cohort that needs additional math support?
It's really cohorts that need additional math support. There are some that are receiving support in literacy or English language arts, and then those that are receiving in math support during the school day. And beyond that, we're looking to also create opportunities to effectively extend the school day by working with additional cohorts. Some of them may be a part of that 7th period already, to be able to continue to work with them on math, because it's just such a fundamental set of skills that really permeates across science and just everyday life. So they really do need to be confident and competent in math, and we're just exploring possibilities on how to support them in a way that's meaningful.
And for staffing purposes, with it's consistent. So similar to STEAM, you don't just drop in and drop out of STEAM. So STEAM is a commitment after school that you're going to attend and be a part of it. So I'm wondering if that's going to be similar, or if it's going to be more of like a drop-in in-person tutoring.
And that's a great question. It will not be, and it's not intended to be drop-in. We want to be much more focused and targeted, and we will need to secure a commitment. So that will most likely involve transportation, right? We'll have to make that available. So there's some moving parts here that we've talked about, understanding also that students, they may not want to be here beyond the school day. I respect that. I understand that. So it's going to have to be something that we introduce in the right way, so that they view it and receive it as support. It's not intended to be a punishment. That's not the task here, but it is important that they receive support somehow. And right now, that's an option on the table.
I just was hoping along those lines that the support is going to be open-ended and individualized, because sometimes the support may come in the fact that these guys are need remediation versus a rehash of what they learned today to help them get their homework done. They miss concepts that were done a month ago, 3 months ago, 2 years ago, and trying to bring them up to speed versus I didn't understand the concepts I learned in class today, and how do I get those? And so I hope that, this class, the resources are able to differentiate according to the student needs. And I'm assuming that that's going to be the case.
Yes, it's new to us in that regard. It's something that teachers have been welcoming for quite some time, as far as additional math support, consistent with the kind of literacy support that has been extended, particularly to the lower grades. But it's here now, and we're able to put those resources to work. And those are some of the very questions that we have right now that we're trying to sort through. Obviously, the start of the school year has been, there have been other areas of focus, and so we're going to turn our attention to that. We're already turning our attention to that now, so we can solidify those cohorts.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you for bringing us up to speed and showing all the hard work you're putting in there with yourself and all the staff. So the next item is the Golden Valley Charter School unaudited actuals. This is information, and is Tammy going to present that here? Or then she's having some
No,
computer-
I'll be just sharing that these are unaudited actuals that the board effectively receives. And so I've been in close contact with the executive director. Her name is Deanna Downs. She is in her first year as an executive director over at Golden Valley. Right now, they are still in good financial health, but they are working through the decline in enrollment. So that is definitely a focal point for them. And it is something that we are very mindful about. She's already shared with me quite a few strategies that she's trying to put into effect to bolster their enrollment. So I just put it here as information and for the board to receive the unaudited actuals for Golden Valley Charter.
Okay, very good. All right, so next agenda item is our public hearings. We have, I believe, 3 or 2 of them here. Where the first one is a public hearing regarding the sufficiency of textbooks. Open a public hearing to make any determination as to whether the pupils in the district have sufficient instructional material. So, any comments for Ramirez?
This is an annual item, and I can only tell you that all students do in fact have instructional materials.
Okay, so
You have to officially open up.
I am opening up so I'm opening up a public hearing at what time are we at here? At 8:08. And we had no comments or public comments. Okay.
And I don't see a raised hand.
Right, yeah, as far as attendees,
Yeah.
along those lines, because Ms. Romero can be totally. She can't.
Okay, that being said, no comments. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 8:09. The next item is another public hearing regarding the presentation of the initial proposal of the Macy Union School District to the Macy Union Teachers Association for the 2022-2023 school year negotiations and public comment. So we'll go ahead and open that up for a public session, opening that up at 8:09. Did you have any comments after this? Okay, no. Okay, very good. I have no comments and I see no hands raised. Tammy's back. She had to go find a place to plug it. Okay, having no comments, we'll go ahead and close the public session at 8:10. All All right, we also have a third public session to open with the presentation of the initial proposal from the Macy Union School District to the Macy Union Support Team must for the 2022 school year for negotiations and public comment. So again, we'll go ahead and open this up at 2010 for public comment. Okay, hearing no raised hand. Oh, yeah.
These are all regarding negotiation. I'm assuming this would be time for negotiation. The bargaining units, if they want to speak to us as a board, the social is that.
That would be fine, just like any other member of the public. Sure.
Or any other member of the public. Are we going to have public hearings, at each of these meetings going forward until they're closed?
No, it's a public hearing only to announce that we are entering into negotiations.
Okay, so having no other comments and no public questions, we'll go ahead and close the meeting at 2011. I'm sorry, that's 8:11 for those not on military time. All right, so we'll go ahead and go on to the first active discussion item, which is 13A, which is consideration and approval of the board appointment timeline for the Board of Trustees vacancy. Dr. Mayor.
Well, good evening again. This item is coming before you, given the recent information that I received from the Ventura County Commission and our County Office of Education office, indicating that this coming election cycle, there are 3 trustee areas at Mesa trustee areas that need to be filled. Trustee area 1 and trustee area 2 have been filled. And as a result of candidates filing, it will be an uncontested election, and those individuals will be seated formally in the December meeting. However, because there is one area, trustee area 3, that does not have currently any candidates, the trustees will need to move. The board will have to move forward in lieu of an election. Given the timeline between now and the general election, there is no special election that can be called. So effectively, it is an appointment in lieu of an election. So with that said, the timeline that you see before you is intended to fill the seat prior to November 8th, which is the board's task, in order to be seated in December at the next organizational meeting. So with that said, staff recommends that the board review the timeline and accept the timeline as presented.
My question with the timeline, it looks very similar to what we've done in the past when we've had to appoint somebody. So the procedure seems very similar. I was just wondering, it also talked about notifying them, like sending out a mailer or something to people in that district. It also gave an example of putting something in the newspaper. Are all those things required, or is it just what we feel best would get information to that area?
It's what we feel best would get information out. The posting post-election is mandated, and it does need to be done in that fashion. But everything prior, there's a flexibility about what needs to be undertaken.
I'm going to make a motion that we should have done first. That is, I move to approve the board. What is it? The board appointment timeline as presented for the board trustee vacancy.
I apologize about that. You're absolutely correct. Okay, can I get a second to accept the motion for the approval for the board appointment timeline for the board of trustees vacancy?
I will second.
Okay, second that. Okay, now we'll open it up to further discussion. I apologize. I did not do that one correctly. Okay. All right. Any other further questions or discussions regarding this process?
I was just wondering that maybe we can just read into the record that, you know, with the timeline is very short, just to maybe quickly go over that as to what it is. You know, the dates that we have that we're gonna do this, this, and this.
Because it's like tomorrow it's posted. And then.
Right, so we prepared to post tomorrow, I'm assuming. And so, as I'm looking at this, we're gonna approve it tonight. It's gonna post tomorrow, the vacancy. And it's gonna be posted on the website, Mix Matters and District Mailing. On October 18th, we're gonna conduct interviews. That's gonna be at the next board meeting. And we'll make an appointment that night. And then that needs to be posted publicly, and there's 30 days that can happen where somebody can say, I don't like your appointment and contest it. But after 30 days, it goes as a matter of record, and they'll be inducted onto the board.
Okay, so we'll have that up tomorrow, and yeah, looking for applications. Sir. Okay.
So I just want to make one edit real quick,
Mhm.
maybe, we haven't got to the end of this, our current agenda, but maybe for that October 18th, if our board meeting date changes, I'd like that date to change as well.
Okay, we'll reflect that if we have changes in the future. Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's see, where am I at? I don't know where I'm at. I'm on. Okay. My question is that does this have to be done at a regularly scheduled board?
I will have to look into that.
Or can it be done at a
It
sports
can't be
special
done at
board
a
meeting?
special board meeting, to my understanding, but since we have none scheduled and those prove to be difficult to schedule, we just identified as staff, we identified the next regular board meeting.
Right, so that's in response to Jamie's questions, that law may prohibit us from saying, oh, we're not, our regular scheduled board meeting is gonna be on the 9th or the 18th. But for whatever reason, we don't have a quorum or can't meet that day, or make a decision that day,
At the next board.
then it's gonna be the next board meeting.
I will amend my comment by saying that it does have to happen before November 8th. So that is
So yeah, but I don't know if it has to be in a regularly scheduled board meeting. That would be my only caveat. Because I concur with what you say is that we want to do it at an appropriate time. But in accordance with whatever applicable law that may be in controlling.
I will look into that.
I'm not saying there's a law. So long.
I will confirm. I will confirm. Mhm.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approval of the, let me get back to the page here. Appointment timeline for the Board of Trustee vacancy and Trustee Area 3, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, okay, and so that carries 3-0 to no vote, or to no absences. Okay, so moving on, the next item is the Business and Fiscal Services, consideration for approval of 2021-2022 unaudited actuals. I think at this point we'll turn.
I move that we approve the 2021-2022 unaudited actuals.
Okay, can I get a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay, all right, and now we'll move on to discussion and presentation. I'm sorry.
Well, you can hear me. I had to make a quick adjustment because my battery was running low. So as we look at unaudited actuals, just some real quick facts. So if we can go to page 2, please. On CalPADS Day, which was October 6th, we had 565 students in attendance. And enrolled, excuse me. We experienced P2 ADA of 533 students. And actually, this is the first year that the district has not had any students enrolled in a county program for quite some time. So that's interesting to note. Our unduplicated pupil count was 204, which converts to a 3-year rolling average of 41.22%. As we look at many of our neighboring districts and even some of the smalls, that's a very low unduplicated pupil count. And one of the things that is one of the reasons why it's so important, it is a driver, especially in recent years, for any of the categorical monies that the legislature is apportioning. So it's really important to get in those free and reduced lunch applications, as well as identify any other students that might be eligible for the to be considered for unduplicated pupil count. Our funded ADA was 592.28, and that really is reflective of not historically, it's always been the higher of the prior year or current year, but the legislature gave us relief in the 21-22 budget, and we were able to look back to the 19-20 budget year, and our ADA at that point in time was 592. So that's what was reflected and upon which we were funded. We experienced a cost of living adjustment of 5.07%. That's just along with the augmentation. As you recall, in 2021, we did not receive a COLA. It was flat. And so when the 21-22 Budget Act was passed, we received not only the COLA, but augmentation, giving us credit for the prior year's COLA. Total revenue, including transfers in, was about 8.1 million. And our total expenditures, including transfers out, was almost $8 million. As we look at our revenue sources, the shape of the pie hasn't changed significantly, although we are seeing greater federal revenue. In 21-22, Mesa did expend much of its ESSER CARES Act dollars. And so as we move forward, we're just predominantly looking at spending ESSER 3, which was the last bit of money that was allocated. And then also, as you recall, I briefed the board last year that with the ELAW grant that was awarded in the 2021 budget, late in the year of 2021, that was converted to several federal categorical programs in 21-22. So that has been expended as well. But again, the biggest portion of the pie is LCFF revenue, which is about 70%. We are seeing state revenues grow. Last year, we received the ELOP grant as well as educator effectiveness. So that drove state revenues. And as we look at 22-23, again, in this legislative session, it was approved that we would receive an art and music block grant, as well as a low performing learning loss type grant as well, both of which take into consideration the unduplicated pupil count, which I mentioned earlier. As we look at our total expenditures, salaries and benefits for both certificated and classified combined are about 66% of the district's expenditures. We spent about 7% of the expenditures on books and supplies for a total of $524,000. Services and other operating expenses are about 18% of the budget, and those include utilities, insurance. As you know, that we contract with the county for psych services as well as social emotional services. It includes our service agreements, field trips. So services and other operating expenses really is a catch-all, and so that's why we see it reflecting 18% of the budget. Capital outlay of the general fund was just $20,000. We have done significant improvements, but those expenditures are reflected in the bond program. And then other outgo was 6% of the budget, and that includes the pass-through that we pass through to Golden Valley for their federal special ed as well as their AB 602 special ed dollars. And then we did transfer out $275,000 to the Deferred Maintenance Fund. As we went through, gone through this round of construction, we recognize that we really need to pay significant attention to the facilities. And so we felt like that was prudent to be able to allocate that to our deferred maintenance to prevent future decay of the things that you don't see. So as we look to our general fund ending balance, we began the year with $1 million almost $1.7 million on the unrestricted side, a little over 300,000 on the restricted side. And we saw $6 million in unrestricted revenue and $2.1 million in restricted. Total expenditures, $5,965,000 was expended on the unrestricted side, and then almost 1.9 or almost 2 million on the restricted side. And then we just saw contributions of $56,000. As I mentioned earlier, we had no students in the county programs, so that really created a cost savings for the district this year. So we had contributions of $56,000 to other restricted programs. So we netted out with a surplus of $3,443. But as I mentioned earlier, we did $75,000 to deferred maintenance to defray any future maintenance costs of the district. As we look at our, so that leaves the district with an unassigned, unappropriated amount of $1,297,000. And then we have about $480,000 remaining on the restricted side that we will expend as for their designated purpose. When we compare 2021 to 21-22, we did see an increase in LCFF revenue. As you can see, even though we received a COLA, an augmentation of 5.07%, we only saw a 4% increase in LCFF, and that's predominantly because of the drop in unduplicated pupil count. It's a real driver, and any change in percentage does impact LCFF significantly. Federal revenues were up to $800,000 to see a 28% increase, and then other state revenues were down by about 17% to $540,000, and then other local revenue of $1.2 million. So as I mentioned earlier, we did see revenues of about $8.1 million, which is a little over 7% more than the prior year. When we look at certificated salaries, those increased slightly, and that was because of some of the support staff that were hired to support students through COVID using some of our CARES dollars. Classified salaries was up slightly by 5%, and then employee benefits was up by 9%. And that's predominantly due to the increases in PERS and STIRS. Books and supplies up $524,000. Again, that was just a real investment using those federal dollars because we do have some very tight deadlines in which to expend those dollars. And then services and other operating expenses were up to $1.4 million. So actually a 26% increase. Capital outlay was down slightly by about $5,000. And then our other outgo dropped to $491,000. And that does include the excess costs, as I mentioned earlier, for those students that are in county programs. We transferred out $275,000. As you recall, in the prior year, we had transferred some money to deferred maintenance as well as to the pupil transportation fund to acquire the new bus, which we were able to complete. So we only transferred money to deferred maintenance as we closed the books. So we had a surplus of about $176,000 in the general fund. So we saw our Indian fund balance for the general fund climb to $2,184,000. But again, only 1.2, almost 1.3 million is unassigned, unappropriated dollars. When we look to our other funds, cafeteria fund, we saw a surplus of $187,000. Last year, we experienced, had waivers for what was considered the seamless summer option. That meant all students ate free of charge. And so as a result, we saw meal participation grow significantly. And so that fund grew by $187,000. We will be looking to do a spend down of some of that money, although previously we were only able to keep 3 months of working capital on hand, and the state has revised that to be 6 months based upon our experiences through COVID. Deferred maintenance, as I mentioned, we did transfer $275,000 there. That means the fund for deferred maintenance is now at $597,000. Special reserve fund for technology and equipment. You can see how our interest income has dropped so significantly. And last year, again, with interest rates going up, we'll see that grow again. But that's kind of a double-edged sword. Our building fund, while we're in the midst of that project, we were only able to recognize the expenditures for those projects that were completed, those portions of the project completed prior to June 30th. So we'll carry over some of those requisitions into the current year. So at June 30th, we had an ending fund balance of about 6.3, almost $6.4 million. Capital facilities, developer fees, we have about 97,000. County facilities hardship fund, we have about 56,000. And then in the bond interest and redemption fund, we have combined almost $1 million. And that's, as you recall, strictly for debt service on the bonds. So the district is in great shape. We will look forward to updating all the information from first interim. We've already begun working on that. As I mentioned, we did have some new categorical programs that were included in this budget, as well as an increase in the COLA augmentation. At budget adoption, we had recognized, I believe, right around a 9.6% COLA, and it's coming in a little bit over 13%. So the district's in good standing as we move into 22-23. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Tammy. I don't have any questions. I think that's kind of what you got given us. This is the, in the interim and everything looked pretty good. So I don't have any questions. And Jamie? Sullivan? Okay. All right. Looks like we don't have any questions from the board. So we have a motion out there for the approval. All those in favor? Any further discussion? I'm looking at Steve. He's writing. Okay, no further discussion. So all those in favor for the approval of the 2021-2022 unaudited actuals, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, 3-0 or 3-0 and then 2 no votes or 2 absence. Okay, so moving on, the next item is the consideration and adoption of resolution 22-23-01, the GAN limit. Can I get a motion for approval or adoption?
I move to adopt resolution 22-23-01.
I second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This is just the annual passing of the GAN limit. The GAN limit was passed back in the 1970s. It's to restrict the growth of the state budget. And interestingly enough, in 2021, the state passed a law that any excess of the GAN gets passed back to the state. So ours happened to be 0 this year, but Santa Clara will be reducing their GAN limit as we move forward. That's just an interesting note about how the GAN limit works.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, all those for the approval for the adoption of the resolution 22-23-01, the GAN limit, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes 3-0 and 2 absence. All right, so moving on, next is the consideration of the use of the 2021-2022 Proposition 30 Educational Protection Account Funds. Can I get a motion for the consideration of that?
I move that we approve the use of the 2021-2022 Prop 30 Educational Protection Funds.
Can I get a second?
And this is just a housekeeping item. We normally bring this in June, but this year we saw a significant increase from estimated actuals as to what was considered EPA funds. It's a portion of the LCFF calculation, and so we wanted to bring this back to the board for approval as it reflect actual unaudited actuals.
And Tammy, is that why it decreased significantly? Like what we're requesting from what it was 21, 22 to 22, 23?
Right. It really is just a component. CFF doesn't change, the total amount doesn't change. This is just a component calculation. As you recall, the voters passed the education protection account several years ago, and it's reflective of a certain type of tax that's levied. And so we have to recognize it differently, and it cannot be used for administrative salaries.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor for the consideration of the use of 2021-2022 Proposition 30 Educational Protection Account Funds, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 3-0. All right, next is the consideration of ratification contract with the Moore Park Unified School District Child Nutrition Service Agreement for supplying lunch at Macy Union School District. Can you get a motion for the approval of that?
I move to extend the Moore Park Unified School District a nutritional service agreement.
I second that motion.
Okay. Any questions or discussion?
Only my appreciation for the partnership with Moore Park Unified, who is providing us with hot meals, bringing them to the site, to Mesa, and just very, very thankful and grateful for their support during this time of transition for us. And other than that, it's been a very pleasant partnership for sure.
I might add, we're simply extending because of the unforeseen construction things that we saw.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. And just a point of clarification that we are still charging our own meals, but they are providing a component, effectively the main entree for lunches. We are still providing some of the side dishes and breakfast on our own.
Any other further questions or discussion? Okay, and again, I think we all thank them for stepping up and helping us out since our delay in our construction project there. So all those in favor for the ratification of the contract with the Moore Park Unified School District Child Nutrition Services Agreement for supplying lunch at Macy Union School District, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 0. Okay, next item is the consideration approval of the new adult breakfast rate of $2.85 for breakfast and lunch at $4.75. Increase for the fiscal year 2022-2023. Can I get a motion for the approval?
I move that we increase the costs as outlined in the agenda.
A second.
Okay, and this is just for the adults, not for the kids. Okay,
All kids eat.
okay, any questions, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the approval of the new adult lunch and breakfast rates as proposed for 2022-2023, all those in favor? Okay,
Aye.
3-0. Okay, so moving on now, the next during educational and student services section is the consideration and adoption of resolution 22-23-02, sufficiency of textbooks. Can I get a motion for that?
I so move.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all right, any questions, discussions?
Only to make a point that I made earlier, which is that we have sufficient textbooks for all students.
Okay, very good. All those in favor of the consideration of the adoption of resolution 22-23-02 regarding the sufficiency of textbooks, all those in favor?
Aye.
3-0. Okay, next item is the consideration of the approval of the internship placement site agreement with California State University Channel Islands. Can I get a motion for that?
I move that we approve the internship placement site agreement with Cal State Channel Islands.
I second.
Okay, any discussion or questions regarding this?
This is an ongoing partnership with Cal State Channel Islands, intended to just provide support for an intern program, an intern on site. One of our staff members is an intern, is considered an intern, and just ensuring that that there's an effective partnership to continue to support those efforts to success.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor for the approval of the internship placement site agreement with Cal State University Channel Islands, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 3-0. All right, so next item is the consideration of the approval of the MOU with JP Morgan Chase Financial Health Presentation Event. Can I get a motion for that?
I move to approve the MOU with JP Morgan Chase for financial health presentation event.
I second the motion.
Okay, all right, so any questions, discussion?
I actually do want to highlight quite a few things about this promising new partnership with Chase Bank. And that is that it's a curriculum intended to bring financial literacy to our middle school students. And I think it can have a tremendous benefit on our students, not the least of which is teaching them very practical skills of how money works and how the economy functions. Starting to introduce topics that perhaps aren't very widely discussed, but that are very critical to ensuring their role as a productive member of our community as they reach adulthood, and also has the added benefit of providing them with a practical approach to math and why it's important, and not just math, but economics and a host of other topics that are very relevant. So I don't have details on exactly when and how it will work, but it is intended to be 3 sessions. And right now I'm still very open. I've yet to have a full conversation with staff, middle school staff, just a very light conversation with a couple specifically around how we might be able to introduce it. But it is something that we will certainly discuss. I don't have a timeline set for that quite yet. It has to definitely need to discuss that with the staff in order to see where it might be placed more appropriately, given the topics of study in the classroom. So anyway, I'm just very excited to be in a position to take this on, and perhaps some other opportunities present themselves in the near future.
Any further questions or discussion?
I was just going to add that it's a great partnership, and they're willing to do it at no cost to the district as well, to be a part of educating our students, which is amazing.
I'm very excited about this whole program, bringing financial literacy. I'm very grateful for that, and that they're willing to come do that. And I think that it's going to benefit our students greatly. I hope that they take advantage of it and grasp the value of it, how it can impact the rest of their lives.
Agreed, a very good program there. And again, I like seeing the collaboration with the community and businesses locally that can help, further our educational experience here. So, okay, all those in favor for the approval of the MOU with JP Morgan Chase Financial Health presentation event, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 3-0. All right, so the next item is the consideration of the approval of the MOU with the Miteco Indigenous Community Organization Project. Can I get a motion for approval?
I move that we approve the MOU with Mishko Indigenous Ingenia Community Organization Project, aka MICO.
Can I get a second?
I will second that.
Okay, any questions or discussions with this?
Here again, just a very exciting partnership. We have families at Mesa that for whom language access may be a challenge, and that would benefit from interpretation and translation in a language of their own by fluent speakers. And I think it's this particular organization is a nonprofit that is throughout the county, and is intended to really support our efforts as schools to be able to better partner with our families. And this type of interpretation translation becomes very critical because at Mesa, there aren't an abundance of Mixteco families, but where they are, they have multiple children. And we want to make sure that we continue to partner effectively with them in comprehensible ways that broker a good partnership.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion or questions?
One other point, that this is also a service free of charge to the district.
No, it's not.
I'm sorry, I take that back.
No, it's not.
Take that back, take that back, take that back. It is a partnership that can yield some services that may be free of charge, including all of this one specifically for interpretation. including some programming that will be part of the next phase. But interpretation, translation is something that we pay for through other means, even as a school, by way of additional support for staff. So it's consistent at the very least, even though there aren't the same number of families available. Correction.
Okay. Yeah. Let's get someone being more close attention there. Okay, very good. All right, any further question or discussions? Okay, so all those in favor for the consideration of the approval of the MOU with the Meseco Indigenous Community Organization Project, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, 3-0. All right, next item is the consideration of the approval of the 7th grade field trip agreement and request to the Catalina Island, Simi, Toyon Bay on September 30th through October 2nd, 2022.
I so move.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion or questions on this item?
It's a great program. I'm so excited to be part of this. I'm grateful that for those people, the staff that's going to be putting it on and taking time out of their schedules to support our students on this particular event. And I'm so grateful for it.
And just as a fun side note, I have family in Northern California, and their high school kids, this is one of their field trips for their marine science program. And so for us as a middle school to be going to this kind of field trip where high schoolers are going to learn similar information, I think is an excellent, excellent experience.
Yeah, my son is very excited about going to this, but he made it no, I could not go as one of the adult chaperones. He's like, you can't go, Dad. Okay.
Mr. Dryden is going.
Oh, good. All right, any further questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor for the approval of the 7th grade field trip agreement to Catalina Island, Simi, Toyon Bay on September 30th through October 2nd, 2022. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, none. Okay, next item is technology, which is the consideration of the approval of discarding of the obsolete equipment as listed or presented.
So I move to approve the discarding of obsolete equipment as listed, provided that they're already been wiped of any confidential or sensitive information.
I second the motion.
Okay, any further discussion or questions?
I was just questioning, wanting to make sure it's free of charge because there's plenty of different e-waste opportunities that use these kind of events as fundraisers for them. So I just wanted to make sure we were not paying for this.
No, we aren't paying for the service.
And that it's being properly recycled under electronic waste.
I can't attest to that part of it, but I can tell you that the company that we contract with came recommended from the Ventura County Office of Ed. And I think it's safe to assume that they dispose of materials appropriately.
I have to assume that as well, since they charge you extra for that privilege of when you dispose of your computer. At the time that you purchase any sort of electronic equipment, they charge you extra for the disposal of that equipment as well.
And as somebody in the environmental community, make sure you get your bill of lading that shows the number at which you recycle, because that is a requirement by state law that you have that record.
Okay, duly noted. All right, any further question or discussions? Okay, so all those in favor for the approval of the discarding of the obsolete equipment as presented, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 3-0. The next item is the consideration of the adoption of the June 2022 board policy revisions for the listed sections below. Can I get a motion for that?
I move that we adopt the board policies as presented or edited.
I second.
Okay, so any questions or discussion regarding the June 2022 board policy revisions?
I was able to download it.
I think we had to choose an option for food service operations under board policy 3551. So I wasn't aware of the other options. I just wanted to make sure that somebody either could recap me real quick or somebody else feels comfortable with that.
Sorry, can you repeat the specific request?
I don't know what option. Is there like one of how many options?
But you're referring to which BP?
Board proposal 3551.
3551 food service.
Do you know anything about this, Tammy? It talks about paying for personnel from the general fund.
I was just actually trying to pull it up, but the file is too large to pull down.
I make a motion. I amend the motion to exclude board policy 3551, but approve all others.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so the motion is to approve them with the exception of excluding BP 3551 at this time.
At this time.
Okay. All right. Any further discussions or any other questions regarding that? Oh, what's that? Okay, any further discussion regarding the 3551 change to the food service options cafeteria fund? Any further? Tammy, were you able to find anything on that, or is that anything you familiar with?
And which one?
Oh, you couldn't read the board policy. Okay.
I'm actually downloading it now.
Okay. All right, maybe in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and see if we can move forward the motion to, we'll bring that one back. So the consideration of the adoption of the June 2022 board policy revisions for sections listed below with the amendment to exclude. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We'll vote on her amendment, the amendment to exclude the food service option cafeteria fund and bring that back to a later date. All those in favor of bringing back board policy BP 3551?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the amendment is approved. And then going on to the initial motion for the consideration and adoption of the June 2022 board policy revisions for the sections listed above with the noted amendment to exclude board policy 3551. All those in favor? As amended. Okay, all those in favor?
Okay.
Aye. Okay, so we'll bring that one back after we get a clarification on that. Okay, so moving on is the consideration for the approval of the hiring of the following certificated and classified staff. Samantha Gonzalez as a 0.2625 full-time employee after school activities leader effective September 6, 2022.
I so move.
Okay, you get a second?
A second.
Okay, any discussion or questions regarding this?
What age group are you?
So Samantha is joining us on a part-time basis. She'll be here 3 days a week. And right now we are looking at second grade, but that could shift. That could shift depending on need. And we're still, because we have an expansion to the after-school program, kind of filling some needs as well.
Okay, any further questions, any further discussion? No, okay, all those in favor for the approval of the hiring of Samantha Gonzalez as a part-time after-school activities leader effective September 6, 2022, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 3-0. Okay, so wrapping up here, we have items for the future consideration is trustee appointment for Area 3, which we discussed tonight, and then future meetings. Our future meeting currently is set for October 18th, 2022 at 6 p.m. for our regular board meeting. All right, and so
But you were gonna have an issue.
there
with
may,
that.
yeah, we may have to, when we post the meeting, I may need to change that. I may have a conflict on that date. I have to figure out something there. So that may be moved by a day. But that's just informational, and we'll post that before the next meeting. All right, and so at this time, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 8:56. Okay, thank you, everybody.